So the intention from the beginning was to sell the company. We had, this bold idea that if we didn't sell, then, we could look at an IPO similar to what Instacart did.
To exit your business, one of the key building blocks is a high performance leadership team that is cohesive and has high trust, because ultimately, you're handing that over to someone who's going to buy it, and they'll be able to see that in your organization.
If the SOPs changed 1,000 times, we kept those documents updated. So when we got closer to exit, we could easily hand over and show the buyer how everything worked.
The goal with Exit Strategy is to create an educational platform that helps business owners and founders develop skills that will help them get their businesses sold. Today, we're joined by Ariel Navarro, the co-founder of OneCart. It's a highly successful company in the on-demand e-commerce logistics space. So OneCart allows, it's a marketplace that allows users to shop from multiple stores, including Woolies, Pick n Pay, and others. So they were pioneers of the on-demand grocery delivery in South Africa. They launched a few years prior to COVID. They scaled nationally within 3 years, employed over 100 in the head office and about 1,000 gig workers. They successfully launched and still manage the Woolies Dash operation, which I use a lot, so thank you for that. And in 2021, they were acquired by Massmart. So really, really great story. So Ariel is no longer involved. He fully exited the company in 2022. And today he's going to share some of his experiences and stories with you to help you think about that next stage in your journey. So thanks for being with us today, Ariel.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So I think it's always a good place to start, in the beginning of the journey of the company, and maybe a little bit of background on yourself. Where did you grow up? What did you study? And how did you get into building a company?
So just to go back into the past, I have been an entrepreneur for most of my career. I actually studied health and fitness when I left school. Was in the health and fitness scene for about 4 years, and then during that time, I realized that I need to earn while I'm sleeping and not earn per hour. And that's kind of what led me down the entrepreneurial route. Started maybe about 10 or 11 different companies, some somewhat successful, most of them failed, left me in a lot of debts here and there, but lots of good learnings. And then I was involved in a lot of different companies, including some tech startup events, networking events, and that kind of got me into the tech scene, which ultimately led me to serendipitously meet my Linton, my founding partner in the business. And then we met in early 2017. I was involved in a few operational businesses prior. So when we met, it was more of a consulting basis. We were doing some market research. He was still doing some market research on the idea, seeing if it could be viable for the South African market. And we built up a good rapport. And then about 8 months later, we officially launched the business together.
So now that you kind of started the business and you've gone into R&D phase, testing the idea, you mentioned that you went to market to raise capital. And I guess finding your first investor is a key milestone in an entrepreneur's journey. Having to raise the capital, what was your main motivation and how did you go about getting your first investor on board?
We spent during the market research phase, we spent a lot of time building financial and operating models to the best of our ability. On-demand grocery delivery and building an app that allows you to shop from multiple stores didn't exist. And when you're building something innovative and risky, you have a lot of naysayers, and um, it makes it a lot harder to raise capital. When you're trying to do something first. Um,
Mm.
even though it was a proven and very successful business overseas, um, tailoring it for the South African market is a totally different story. So we had the financial models by the time we went out raising capital. We were quite confident with the financial model that we built. Um, Pitched to a number of investors, and then we ended up meeting one guy in private equity who actually lives in the States. So, he shops on Instacart. He understood the
Mm.
business model straight away. And I think that's the one, that was one of the selling points was, he understood it from the beginning. A lot of the other investors that we pitched to knew of the businesses overseas and were very doubtful of those businesses ever becoming sustainable. So there was a lot of, there were a lot of hurdles to try and overcome in raising capital in South Africa, where the mentality is very different. Um,
Yeah.
so we found someone that believed in us, and when we raised our first round of capital and launched the business in 2018 January, um, it felt it finally felt like some validation over years of hard graft and trying to prove everyone else wrong that you can actually start a business and start something innovative and actually raise capital and actually get to market.
Yeah.
So it was a
Yeah.
great validation.
It is nice to get that first fundraise under the belt until you realize that you
Mm.
have to deliver on what you promised, those models.
Well,
Um,
that's the thing. Now you've got shareholders. Very different
yeah.
ballgame.
So how was your kind of investment structured in the beginning? Because I think, you know, depending on your sort of end goal, was it more of a venture capital structure where they wanted you to grow and ultimately exit, or was it more of a private equity play where someone was coming in with a sort of a longer time horizon and less aggressive growth objectives? What was the kind of motivation or the return expectations from the investor, and how are they planning on kind of helping you achieve your goals?
So I think it's not a one size fits all type of answer. I think it really depends on the type of business that you're raising capital for, which will very much determine the agreement and how you structure the capital raise. In our case, because of the type of business, high growth B2C business, we needed to show scale. We needed to show profitability for the South African market. South African investors want to see profit. So we had to show exactly how we were going to get to that path and what scale meant in the South African market, and what would kind of get us to that mass adoption. So the intention from the beginning was to sell the company. We had, this bold idea that if we didn't sell, then we could look at an IPO similar to what Instacart did.
Mm.
But during COVID and going through COVID and just understanding the market landscape over the last couple of years of the business, we realized that a sale would make more sense. But initially, when we went to the investors, we showed them a growth path of getting to scale and ultimately getting the company to profit and to an exit.
Okay. We've recently partnered with Kaya Creative Studios, who are just helping us put this whole project together, making it seamless for us.
Partnering with Kaya really feels aligned to our mission and our integrity of our brand. They really do have a full array of podcast-related services and products. The Kaya team have the experience, they have the insights, they have the understanding and the full medium to really help a brand kind of grow.
If you're listening to the show and you're interested in starting a podcast or making it part of your branding marketing strategy, you should get in touch with Kaya. It's an excellent service. Hope to make some amazing content out there. And in terms of your financial modeling and your forecasting, did you have a specific background in that? Because I find, with a lot of business owners that I've been speaking to, it is one of the sort of skill sets that's kind of lacking in a traditional business. Like, of course, there's accounting, and it's like, okay, we're looking at our balance sheet and our income statement, etc. We see the past, but the actual ability to build good models and to forecast future growth, and how do you actually set up your cost structure and your budgets to be quite well defined. It sounds like you did a really good job of that. Was that your skill set? Did you bring someone else in, or how did you go about that process?
So the financial model, and a forecast is a forecast. Especially at the very beginning of a business, it's not going to you're not going to show an investor a zigzag to profit. You show them the hockey stick, and that's what you believe that you're going to achieve. Um, the financial modeling. So I was responsible for all the financial modeling, but it was obviously a contribution between the two of us in how we got to that end
Mm.
kind of model. But it really came down to understanding what the operation would look like over the next few years, and doing a lot of analysis and a lot of research on similar companies and how they operate, and how many people did they employ in which department, and then building it into the models in that way, which also building the model over a few months also gave what almost became like a guideline to how we need to grow the business.
Yeah.
And we tried to stick to the forecast as best as we could. But in this type of business, the numbers just changed dramatically every year, and we it's forecasting is definitely a skill, but you can develop that skill when you're in the grind, and you don't have a choice. you you learn how to put these models together. um,
Yeah.
I'm not an accountant. I don't have a finance background, but I pretty much was self-taught and built these models, which they were a good guide. I can't say that they were um, always that we always managed to meet
Yeah.
the financial expectations, especially not
I've
on the
never,
cost line.
I've never, I've never been able to achieve any of the forecasts that I've set out. Tried, but
No,
it's
yeah,
tough.
I mean, you almost don't expect it at the beginning. The first 2-3 years. Um, I think ultimately what you're just looking for is to hit the top line numbers, and then hope that you have enough cash to keep sustaining the growth. Because costs are always the most difficult to anticipate. So we did a pretty good job
Mm.
at hitting our top line numbers, but you know when it comes to expenditures and things that you don't foresee, that pretty much throws your forecast off.
Yeah. So after you guys raised the capital, I mean, obviously, when I introduced you, you had 100 people in your head office. I mean, that's quite a sizable operation. You obviously had to hire a lot of people to build it out. How did you go about building out this operation and getting good people and building the culture to become a company that could get a successful exit?
So great question. It's uh it's not an easy feat to grow a business to that size, and you can't do it on your own. If I just take some time to think about it, when you're growing the business every year, you're kind of improving the processes, figuring out the best ways to do things, building out, hiring one person at a time is kind of like how you grow those teams. And um, hiring, I get, everyone says you need to hire the right people, but you don't really know who the right people are. At the beginning, you kind of, scrambling, and you just want someone that you think you can trust, and that
Mm.
has some level of skill set that you're looking for. Then you put them in management roles, and then over the years, you realize that that person may not be fit for a manager, and then you hire someone who does come from a management role, or then um, you know that hopefully that person can help you put different processes in place and grow that team independently. Um, but I think part of what we did was focus on accountability. So there was a lot of focus on um, making sure that the people that we hire understood their role very clearly from the beginning, understood their expectations, what our expectations were of them, um, and then you just grow slowly, or at least you try to grow the teams as um, methodically as possible.
Mm. Yeah, I think when you hire a lot of people at once, it can get very messy, actually, in terms of trying to keep the culture together, because every person you bring in adds a whole nother dimension to the culture, actually.
Maybe just
I'm
on that, just to jump in on that point of culture. What the one thing that we always try to get right in terms of culture um, was the mindset that we instilled in everyone that we employed. So looking at um, doing culture fun things was not part of our culture. Doing drinks on Fridays and things like that. That was, a couple things that we did here and there. But what we really focused on was building a culture in terms of being as productive as possible, a culture of vision. So we really tried to instill this grand vision of what we wanted to achieve in the South African market, and getting that right, I think, is one of the most important things in a business. Is really, getting the mindset of every employee that you bring on right from the beginning, and that's what's going to drive the culture um, to be an effective organization.
Yeah, that's so true. So how did you develop that mindset with the people you brought on?
It's more about how we managed, instead of looking at it from, how did we instill that mindset. It's more how we manage them, in order to empower them to understand, to get to that mindset that we wanted. So you paint the picture, we painted the vision, um, and then in terms of the management around the employee and their role, we tried not to be micromanagers, even though there is an element of micromanaging until you don't have to, which was kind of like the how we looked at certain employees when they first started, um, just to like kind of drill down into each employee what they need to do and what they're accountable for, and then you just kind of let them fly.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, look, a lot of the way that we managed and how we handled bad situations was really the driving force of a good culture and getting to that kind of growth mindset. Leading with empathy, handling situations without blame. Those type of softer skills are very, very important.
Yeah, I feel like those skills build a culture of trust, and I think
Yeah.
teams that have high trust levels, can perform at very high levels and can move fast. I mean, I've been very guilty of, you know, sometimes creating a culture where there's distrust because, putting pressure on people and being quite hard, and actually I've seen it fall apart. And as a business owner, when you lose the trust of your team, it is really hard to get back on track and to achieve the milestones you've set out for yourself. So, if there's anything to take
Absolutely.
away from my experience, it's protect that trust at all cost with your leadership team. A lot of it comes from transparency. I think, if you're not transparent with your team, it's quite hard for them to trust you fully. And if you don't stick to your word and lead with integrity, it can also break down trust. So yeah, it's a very interesting concept because I've seen it play out in my own teams, when it's had high trust and when it's had low trust, and actually the difference
Mm.
in team performance. So if you're planning to exit your business, one of the key building blocks is a high performance leadership team that is cohesive and has high trust, because ultimately, you're handing that over to someone who's going to buy it, and they'll be able to see that in your organization, because it also shows in, I
Definitely.
guess, it shows in the performance. So yeah,
Mm.
well done on getting that right. Definitely not an easy task at all. And I guess one of the other things I think about is, when someone's acquiring a company, they're looking at your systems. The business has a series
Yeah.
of systems. How do you acquire customers? How do you deliver for your customers? How do you manage your financial system? How do you do your technology? How did you set up your systems in a way where they could be transferred over to someone who acquired the business? That has to be intentional and has to be well set up.
Yeah. No, of course. When we went about putting together ways of working, putting together the different systems and processes, um, one thing that we did, that I can say we did right from the beginning, was document a lot of what we did. So, even if the SOPs, standard operating procedures, changed 1,000 times, we kept those documents updated, and that helped because it helped with employee onboarding, which we documented as well, and we kind of kept those um, somewhat up to date throughout the business. So when we got closer to exit, we already had a lot of the documents and SOPs and um, methods of methods of working that were repetitive, and we could easily uh, you know
Hand over.
show the handover and show the buyer how everything works.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, from their perspective, they're saying, we're taking this and we need to scale it. So, is
Mm.
this a repeatable and predictable process? Does it make sense? And, can we implement it? So yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good insight, is documentation of key processes across the different systems in your business is key. If you're going to have a lead generation system and you get leads through Facebook advertising or etc., like, document that, show like, okay, this is our marketing system, these are the ways we get our leads, this is how we do it, this is what we do, and this is how we get our results. And if you can break that down into
Mm.
the different areas of your business, in a methodical way, that just shows that you're much better prepared, and it also shows that you're professional. And I think
Yeah.
that that gives you just more footing to stand on when you're negotiating with an acquirer. Showing, look, we're professional, we're doing this like really well. Our management team is on top of this stuff, and it's not messy. I think
you know
making sure your business is not messy is key.
That is key, but when is a business not messy? The bigger you get, the messier it is.
I'm
But
actually, I'm talking from that, like standing on a pedestal here because my business is like one of the most messy. Like every time I look at it, I'm like, shit, how did we get into this mess?
yeah,
Because we built
no,
tech, built all this tech, and we added all these features, and now we're like, sheesh, we have way too many features here. It's so messy. Like, how do we maintain this? And
mm,
even your financial systems. And I think this really does probably resonate with business owners who've had their businesses for like 40 years or 50 years, and things have just accumulated and systems are all over the place. And no one's actually taking the time to go like, how do we simplify this so that it's a bit more clear? Because things work.
also, yeah, yeah, no, exactly. And maybe just to add to that, when we were looking at which systems to implement, we always had this saying, will it work at scale? So we didn't always go for the cheapest options. We
Mm,
looked at the software, whatever it was, financial operations, HR, marketing, and we decided if this is something that is going to last us a year, is it going to last us 3 years? Could it last us even longer? Um, and that's how we decided on what types of systems we were going to use. It wasn't just a cost factor, but it was also a sustainability kind of like a look at it.
I think that's a great lens to look at things through, because you do have to imagine your business is going to grow, and can your systems handle that? I've been guilty of building things that are not built for scale, too bespoke, and then reached a point and had to undo them. So I never really thought about that in the beginning, because you're just building. So you're just trying to get to the next. Okay, so yeah, another key question before we move into the buyer process. Obviously your business grew quite a lot, and that attracted the interest of acquirers, and I think that's one of the key things that buyers are looking for is consistent growth, decent gross margins. How did you guys grow? What were your tactics for growth?
So when we launched in 2018, and then um, no one could foresee COVID, but COVID was an obvious catalyst for the business. We went from doing like a couple hundred orders a day to over 1,000
Mm,
within like almost a week or 2 weeks, um, and that led us to go on a massive hiring spree. And I won't get into it, but it was a crazy time, and I don't wish to repeat that. But COVID was a major catalyst for us, and what it did, it forced us to scale, forced us to um, iterate and change structures, update systems, and yeah, it forced us into a position where we could now handle a lot more orders. Um, and then we started getting a bit more strategic, understanding, how can we get closer to some of the retailers that we were partnering with. For example, Macro was initially a vendor on the site before we actually got to know them as uh, in a deeper sense to lead to conversations of acquisition. Um, and there were different strategies that we had with them to launch different product ranges on the site, and then we started working with Woolies as a B2B play where we white labeled the platform initially, and looked at a lot of different strategies to find
mm,
these catalysts that would help us scale in kind of bigger um, chunks at a time. So even though we were constantly growing daily in terms of users, there were a few larger catalysts that helped us go from
mm.
1,000 to 3,000, and so on.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that always happens when you're building out your growth strategies. You try a whole bunch of things, and then there's like that one thing that just has a way bigger result. And I think,
Yeah.
business owners should always be, they have their predictable systems for growth, but looking for, those ways to get a little step up. Like, can you do a strategic partnership, or have you done an affiliate type of strategy, or have you looked at growing through acquisition? It's not something we've really talked about much on this podcast, but in the US, growing through acquisition
Yeah.
is actually quite a big strategy that a lot of companies use to prepare for an exit. They want to get to a certain size, and the quickest way they can do that is acquiring competitors. Actually, still going to try to find someone who's done that kind of roll up strategy, because I want to unpack that. But yeah, so then, obviously now you've grown to a point, and you've discussed with your partner, and you've said, okay, I think we might be ready to sell. When did that point arrive, and what happened next?
So it didn't really come. It wasn't that simple. Should put it that way. We didn't really come to a point where we said, "Hey, let's sell." It was more, market conditions kind of showed us that the times were changing very fast. Checker 60 was in the market, and slowly becoming, not slowly, actually very quickly becoming the leading player in on-demand delivery. And yeah, with the market conditions changing, COVID was slowing down, which impacted our sales. We were put in a position where we needed to start making some decisions. And it happened to be at a time when Massmart was looking for an on-demand logistics player. We were still one of the dominant independent players in the market. So once we had Macro on the platform, we started developing a deeper relationship with them, and then the conversations led to them wanting to invest in the business, which then led to conversations in them acquiring the business outright, basically.
So yeah, I mean, that's quite a progression, right? I guess. Did you want to set up some kind of competitive process, or were you quite happy to negotiate with one strategic partner, as a potential acquirer?
So it was a competitive bid uh, with another company. I can't talk too much about it, but yeah, it was a competitive bid, and yeah, I mean, we had a very good rapport with the Massmart team from the
Mm.
beginning. We both had a similar vision of what we wanted to see with the business long term. Um, they had very big goals. We had big goals, and we kind of saw the future together. So from that point of view, having a partner that understood the vision and aligned with our growth path, and vice versa, was crucial.
Interesting. So obviously, this was your first exit of a business, and I can imagine that a lot of the things that you went through were fairly new and maybe emotionally charged and confusing, but also exciting. What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned throughout this process, or even some of the best insights that you can share with other business owners that might be thinking about this or going through this kind of process?
In terms of going through, are you saying going through like a due diligence, basically?
Yeah,
Um,
like a due diligence, a negotiation, finding an acquirer. I mean, there's all of these things you know, are new. I guess, or maybe you had experience in them, but most of the business owners I talk to haven't been through this process, and so, the insights that you have specifically around your experience going through
mm.
it, are if you had to come to me and say, "Hey, Aaron, you're selling your business," like these are the things you have to start preparing or thinking about. I'm just curious as to what they would be.
I think one, just having a very focused goal in terms of what you want to achieve as a business, because that goal ultimately guides everyone in the company to be on the same page and to be pushing every day towards that single united kind of vision, and then being organized enough
Mm.
to have a financial kind of plan on what it's going to take to get there. And when you know that you need to raise capital, you try and plan ahead as much as you can. So like going through the motions of building the business and being organized, building the teams, having that vision, eventually, you get to a point where you know that you've reached a point in the business um, where you could sell, where you're at a point where if you get to a point where there's that possibility, then I mean you know it when you're there. It's not really a matter of you know setting a goal to sell within X amount of years, but rather setting up a goal to when you're going to get to a point in the business where you can kind of let go and let the management teams run, and you can get to a point in the business where growth happens without you. So when you get to that point, you kind of realize that selling could be an option. Um,
Yeah.
and we got to that point when we got into the discussions with Massmart. We had a full management in place. Every department had a head. Um, those departments had managers who managed others. It was a full kind of hierarchy setup type of company. Um, and yeah, by that time, there was processes along the chain. Um, had we not had that, and had it just been you know a very small management team, or even just us the founders kind of still running around like headless chickens fixing
Mm.
everything, we probably wouldn't have even thought of selling. But um, because we got to a point where um, there was a full exco in place, and things were run like a almost I wouldn't say corporate, but it was very much on the way there, in terms of how we ran the company. And because we got to that point, it was an obvious kind of next step
Mm. Mm.
when the opportunity presented itself.
Right, right, right. That makes sense. And in terms of negotiating with the buyer when it came to the terms, I think the term sheet becomes quite an interesting negotiation point because there's the price, then there's the terms at which the transaction happens. Is there an earnout? What are the warranties like? What I mean, without going into valuation specifics numbers, how did you do a valuation? And what were the terms of the agreement?
I mean, I can't speak to the specific terms of the agreement, unfortunately, but I can, um, try and give some insight into, how we valued the company, and um, how we dealt with the legal kind of side of it. Um, I mean, in terms of valuing the company, we looked at, I think it was the growth over the last 3 years or so, current last 12 months, and a future projection of about 2 to 3 years. Um, it wasn't very complicated in terms of the level of detail we went into was significant, um, but we had a lot of data to bring together to show a good trajectory. Um, Again, it comes down to the buyer and the type of business when valuing a company, and um, Massmart, being a conglomerate and owned by Walmart, um, they are very focused on GMV, which is gross merchandise value. It's total sell through for anyone who doesn't know. It's your
Mm.
basically it's your turnover, your top line turnover. Um, and that was a metric that was very important. And then obviously, you look at your gross revenues and your EBITDA. Um, so yeah, that's how we went about kind of valuing the company and looking at that forward multiple, looking at P multiples in this sector. I don't remember what the P multiple was, but we looked at basically a chart of what the P multiples were and based it off, standard industry practices.
Mm.
And that's all available online. And yeah, it's not too difficult to value a company. I think what makes it difficult is to show how you're going to get there. We worked with advisors throughout the DD process, and I can definitely attribute a lot of the success in the road during the DD to the guidance that they provided for us. Um, I won't name the advisors, but if there's any listeners that would like a warm intro, I'm happy to facilitate after a short meet and greet. Um, but yeah, I think having the right team of advisors was absolutely essential.
Yeah, that's actually a theme that's come through almost all the episodes I've done so far is that, the business owner attributes a lot of the success in the exit process to the support of the advisor in, obviously negotiation, helping set up the data room properly, keeping the momentum of the deal, which I think is quite important.
Crucial.
And yeah, and also like supporting, the entrepreneurial founders emotionally through the process because I think it can go all kinds of ways, depending on what unfolds, and expectations and things that crop up last minute, etc. So that's quite interesting. And did you have an earnout built into the agreement? I mean, I'm sure there was something in there.
There wasn't an earnout for most part. I never had an earnout.
Oh wow,
Speaking
that's the dream.
personally, but yeah, look, I think we uh, we were under a lot of time pressure to close the deal. It was already a DD of about 9 months, if I recall correctly. And deal fatigue is a big thing. Like you mentioned, the momentum, keeping that momentum alive is difficult. Um, and we were lucky that they wanted a clean deal. And yeah, we managed to get a all cash offer on the table. Um, and then once we got to those final kind of moments of finalizing the amount, finalizing the type of the payout, and the timelines, and kind of like last few targets in the DD to get to. It was quite a quick turnaround from there. I resigned about 6 months later, and I mean my reason for resigning was just I was totally burnt out after
Yeah.
like 5-6 years of pushing that. Yeah, it felt like the right time for me.
Okay. So how did you feel once you resigned and you knew that you had pushed so hard to get a result? Were you did you just say, I'm done, I'm gonna travel, I'm gonna just chill for a little while before I get stuck into something else?
Yeah, look, I mean, when when you all of a sudden in a position that you've never been in before, not having any bad debt, you have the ability to travel more, um, help out. I helped out my family. You can I could invest in ways that I couldn't before, and it was an incredible feeling initially, um, but it took a while to get to that feeling of well, how can I say it? It took a while to get to that feeling of appreciating everything that I had built,
Mm,
and that
mm,
we built together with the teams and with everyone. Um, because if I go back to when I resigned, the day after I woke up in the morning, I realized I don't have a work email address anymore. Nothing goes to my
mm.
Gmail. So all of a sudden, I
You
didn't
like
have an
that?
email address. I realized, oh, I've got nothing to do, and all of a sudden, I'm hit with almost a sense of guilt and a sense of lack of purpose.
Mm.
Um, so I did what any rational person would do, and I booked a one-way trip to Barcelona, and sold my car and said, you know what, fuck it, I'll see where it takes me. Um, and yeah, I mean, it took me a good year to find my feet again in terms of what I want to do, in terms of um, almost accepting the accomplishments, if you want to
Mm,
look at it like that. Because I think everyone goes through a little bit of an imposter syndrome um, after you sell. It's almost through the research that I did, it's almost natural to have that feeling of imposter syndrome and almost guilt because you're leaving the teams behind. You walking
mm,
away in a very different position in your life. But you know what? You work hard for something, and when you achieve success uh, in the way that we did, you can it's you realize it's okay to admit that you've done well.
mm,
um,
mm.
and
That's
and
rare.
you don't
I mean,
often get to it's very rare, and you don't often get to look back and appreciate it. And I'm very grateful about for the journey. I wouldn't change anything.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that because one of the reasons I've decided to do this podcast is I've seen entrepreneurs and business owners get trapped in their business. They put a lot of effort in, they work 10 hours a day, they do it for 10 years, and maybe the business is not growing as well. They might be having some cash flow issues. They're now losing steam, and they almost feel like this thing's worthless. Why am I doing it? They can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that
Yeah,
light can be an exit. It's a strategic buyer, private equity. Private equity comes in with sophisticated capital and systems to help you grow, or a strategic buyer gives you a better route to market to scale, or a private investor wants to take your whole company and implement their own ways of doing things. It is kind of the next step in an entrepreneurship, in a business owner's journey. And then you get the realization of value. um, and what you've shared today around, what I took away from your story is uh, the attention to detail and the financial modeling to set up like a almost like a skeleton of where you want to go
mm.
with a lot of detail. Whether it goes exactly as planned, there's a very clear roadmap there, because it's different when you just write it down versus when you model it out in detail. And I think that gives you like a plan, like a clear plan. um, and then the
Maybe
second, yeah, yeah, go ahead.
sorry to jump in, just maybe on that point. I think having the financial model in detail was great. It was a good roadmap if you want to look at it as a roadmap. But the one thing that I did learn was also just to not to over plan in the actual heat of the business, is not to over plan, but definitely to think ahead. So
Mm,
you also one thing that a mistake that I made in building the business was that I was an intense over planner, and
yeah.
I'm the complete opposite now. I do a lot of thinking, and I do a lot of um, work on what the future of the business is going to look like, but I don't build unnecessary things if I don't need them right now. So we do think ahead. We are planning, but definitely not. Um, I'm not spending too much time in building unnecessary
Mm,
processes or building unnecessary uh,
mm.
documents or unnecessary financial models unless I need it at that time. Um,
Yeah. I guess that's a nice evolution
yeah,
of your style, you know. Now that you
yeah,
know what you know, you're like, okay, maybe I can keep it more simple and more
yeah,
straightforward and, less
exactly.
bloated and more lean and get better results. It's a great evolution. I think
Mm,
my evolution is similar. I used to have so many documents and so many plans
mm,
and so many ideas, and now I'm like, wait a second, like it's quite simple. I need to grow a bit, keep my costs under
yeah.
control, and like have good like systems in place. So yeah, I think the early journeys of entrepreneurs are filled with chaos, as far as
Mm,
I can see through my lens. So yeah,
totally.
we're almost wrapping up, but I just wanted to get a quick indication of like what you're up to now. What are you busy with at the moment? It's not, I've heard a bit from your brother and yourself. It sounds super interesting. It'd be cool to just get a quick overview of the concept.
Yeah. So it took me a little while to figure out what I wanted to do next. I'm definitely back in the hustle and hard grind now. So it's quite exciting. Um, I always had an interest in investing in real estate, but I didn't have the knowledge nor the time to really get into it over the last few years, or the funds too. So now, together with my brother, we founded a company called Bridgegate, and um, the current model is that we specialize in sourcing high quality property investments for investors, specifically in middle class markets. Um, I won't say too much, but in a couple months' time, we'll be launching a new prop tech platform that I do believe will be a first in real estate investing for the South African market. Um, and yeah, I won't say too much, but just watch the space.
Okay, I'm
It's going to
busy
be
checking out.
exciting to yeah, no, the new platform is going to be a totally different experience in investing in real estate. It's not anything that you've actually seen in South Africa. Similar things do exist, but yeah, we haven't
That's
seen it for
exciting.
the South
That's
African market.
exciting. Yeah, I know. I've spoken to your brother, and he's really, really excited about it. So, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you build. Taking a lot of those learnings that you've had in your previous business, applying them in the new concept at an even higher level. And yeah, I mean, I hope that you paid forward to other business owners and everyone that asks you for advice. You share it, and I think doing this
Yeah,
podcast is really going to be helpful for a lot of people. I've learned a lot. I'm sure the audience is going to benefit from this conversation. And yeah, I mean, I guess if they want to reach out individually, I'm sure you won't have a problem with that on
yeah.
LinkedIn. I'll put your link in the show
I do
notes.
have more free time. I do
Yeah,
have more free time now. Yeah,
that's great. That's great. Ariel, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I enjoyed chatting to you, and I hope to see you for lunch soon.
yeah, 100%. Thanks, Aaron. Chat to you soon.
Cheers.